Welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, February 15th, and we have a great show for you today. Our featured guest is Kathleen Scanlon. She is a member of the Brookline Zero Emissions Advisory Board and active in Brookline's Mother Out Front chapter. And she's going to talk to us today about electrification, specifically the movement within Brookline and the tools and resources that are available. I hope that you will stay and check out that interview, again, recorded a few days ago, just after we finish the news. The United States Department of Education announced that it is taking steps to accelerate college financial aid rewards for the upcoming school year. This comes as the department faces criticism for its rollout of the new free application for federal student aid, commonly known as FAFSA. House Democrats saw their caucus expand Tuesday when Tom Sweezy won a special election in New York to replace expelled Congressman George Santos. Speaker Mike Johnson has said that the United States House of Representatives will not take up the foreign aid and border security bill passed by the Senate last week. He instead said that the House will be working on their own bill. Massachusetts state officials have been looking at the Fort Point area of Boston as a location for the next overflow shelter site. The MBTA Board of Directors is expected to take a vote in late March on a proposed plan to offer discounted fares to riders who earn 200% or less of the federal poverty level. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics said Tuesday that the greater Boston area has seen a slower rise in inflation than consumer prices nationwide. A Brookline police cruiser struck a woman Tuesday night in Coolidge Corner. The woman was taken to Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center with injuries that do not appear to be life-threatening. The town has started demolition of the old Driscoll School last week, 3 months after the new building opened. The site of the old building will host ground source heat pump equipment below the surface, with playgrounds and ball fields above ground. The Brookline School Committee is expected to vote on February 29th on the proposed changes to the English curriculum. Brookline High School has announced plans to transition to an unleveled 9th grade English course next year. Folks, that's the news, and stick with us. We're going to switch over to an interview earlier this week with Brookline Zero Emissions Advisory Board member Kathleen Scanlon. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. And we're back with our guest as advertised. Today we have Kathleen Scanlon. She's a member of the Zero Emissions Advisory Board of Brookline. And we're going to talk today about electrification. Kathleen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tommy. I'm really excited to talk about all the new things we've got in store for residents of Brookline.
Before we talk about that, let's talk about you. Who the heck are you and why should we listen to you? What are you doing on the show? Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a longtime town meeting member from Precinct 3. I am on the Zero Emissions Advisory Board. I'm an architect and, I've been LEED certified for a long time. So I've been very, very interested in building decarbonization and trying to understand how we can electrify everything.
And I'm very familiar with campaigns, but tell us about this Electrify Brookline campaign.
So Electrify Brookline started, I'd say in like 2022, when Brookline Mothers Out Front, which I'm also a part of, met at a brunch, and we started talking about what some of the barriers to electrifying your household were. And the number one answer seemed to be lack of information. And of course, financial concerns and contractor recommendations. So we started talking about how a group of us could address that and get together with our knowledge and start researching to help solve the problem for residents, to come up with an easy to understand guide that would help residents understand some of the challenges and understand what they would need to undertake, because every building, apartment, condo is different. And that's also part of the challenge.
So my house already has electricity. What do you mean electrification? I'm already electrified, aren't I?
Yes, you are electrified. You have an account with your electric utility, And if you do, then you are able to make a switch with all of your electrical appliances and systems to actually help Brookline meet its 2040 goal, which is to have net zero emissions by 2040, of course. And what we're talking about there is a multi-pronged approach where people need to conserve their energy, so reduce energy demand, have 100% green electricity, and then electrify everything. And electrifying everything means that transition off of fossil fuels. So every appliance that uses fossil fuels in your home or household would need to be moved to become an electric sourced product. So we're talking about your car, your heating system, washer, dryer, anything that runs with power, essentially.
Maybe even my water heater, right? My
Yes.
stove,
Stove, exactly. Right.
all of them. Okay, but the electric grid isn't running off of all green power today, right? There's plenty of gas and a little bit of oil and coal in this part of the world. So aren't I just moving the emissions down the street? Am I really eliminating emissions?
Well, the state of Massachusetts has a decarbonization plan as well, and they have a roadmap to get there. And so the state's plan is actually to do all the things that I mentioned, but part of their mandate is that the electrical grid gets greener every single year. So when you talk about a couple of percentage points that add up over time, the electricity grid is actually getting greener. It's getting to be less dependent on those fossil fuels. And so really that is our only pathway to having a fossil fuel free future. If we stay on gas, there's no options. There's nothing, left. This actual plan has left the station with the state, and we actually are moving towards a greener grid.
So we're going to walk and chew gum at the same time. We're going to simultaneously decarbonize the electric grid and move all of our natural gas or oil fired or propane fired appliances over to electric. And then by the time we get to 2040, we have a green grid and we have a green house, is what I hear you saying.
That's the plan. Exactly.
And so, and I'll just throw in, like, we're talking about carbon emissions, but obviously burning things inside your own house is not free of both literal danger of being burned, but also the carbon monoxide emissions and the volatile organic compounds, right? So there are these extra benefits.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, studies are coming out, fast and furiously about all the pollutants and indoor air quality issues associated with gas stoves. And so that's like a number one reason to, replace your stove when it's ready to end its useful life with an electric induction version. And those are not the old electric resistance heater type of stoves that maybe your grandma had, or maybe you still cook on, but they are actually new technology that is called induction cooktops. And you actually can get a little portable kit, which we have available at the Brookline Public Libraries to check out and experiment with. And there's cookware with it and everything so that you can see what it's all about.
So I have no doubt you've got your mimeograph machine and you're rolling out the copies of the handouts that you're passing out at your church groups and your neighborhood associations, right? Of course not.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a website, I hope. There
is a website, and you can get to it by just Googling Brookline. Electrify Brookline, sorry. And actually, this is what it looks like. It's a town website page. And what it does is it shows all of the available how-to guides. It explains why they're important. It explains the goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2040. And then it shows all the guides available. So the first one, for example, is electrifying your home. Let's make a plan. So it kind of provides an overview and helps you understand what some of the issues are and what challenges might be something you need to think about in advance. Then we've got other guides such as LED lighting, weatherization, like insulation and air sealing, basically, induction cooking, heat pump water heaters, heat pump dryers, heating and cooling with air source heat pumps, and a whole guide on electrical service and what you need to know as far as any upgrades needed, and then a whole guide on renewable electricity, which is something that many people start with. And many people like to start, though, with an induction stove, or they like to start with weatherization. But weatherization is really the key with Mass Save to get an assessment and understand what you need to do as far as getting your home as airtight as possible so that you reduce that energy demand and you aren't spending a lot of money heating or cooling or any of the other things that, place those demands on a household.
So I want to get into some of the details. We're going to pick an example, but you brought up Mass Save. So I do want to sort of offer up the opportunity. What is Mass Save? Tell us a little bit about it and how it fits in with the Electrify Everything campaign.
So Mass Save is a program run by the state. It's paid for by ratepayers who pay into, the programs to actually educate residents about cleaner opportunities to help weatherize their home, how to, maybe change out their light bulbs. It's kind of like a first step for understanding what your home might need to actually get more energy efficient.
So they'll do an audit, but they'll also implement some of these things, won't they?
Oh, yeah. And they'll actually pay for a good part of it. So depending on what your, household needs, it actually can be something that, they kick some money towards your insulation, or usually you get like a lot of free light bulbs that are LED. So, it just depends on your situation, but they actually are very helpful in coming out and laying out some things for you to think about. And they provide cost estimates as well. So you kind of have a place to go after you talk with them.
And I would add, they also can give you a 7-year interest-free loan. So when you're talking about
Yes.
making a major purchase, like a heating system, because your heating system's wearing out and it's time,
Mhm.
7 years of interest-free loan helps you sort of spread out the cost a little bit. And honestly, even if you can pay cash, man, make money on the return. Interest-free loan's a beautiful thing. So that's something you should consider as well. Let's dive down a little bit. I know there's a lot of pages on the website, something for everybody. Let's say like water heating. What would, if I needed, or if I knew I was going to need a water heater, talk us through what the thought process is, how we would go about it, and how this website and this Electrify Everything plays a role.
Sure. So if you are familiar with your home and know the age of your systems, you might be able to predict the useful life coming to an end for things like your water heater. And maybe you're starting to experience some problems. The key is not to wait until it completely breaks and you are in a somewhat of an emergency situation or a rush situation where you have to replace it with the same kind of thing you have, relying on your boiler. And what you want to do is perhaps open up one of our guides, understand what would be entailed. Thank you. And this is one of the guides right here on heat pump water heaters. You would read through the guide. You'd understand why it's important. You'd understand what exactly is a heat pump water heater and how this helps the climate, and then what's involved. Get to know a little bit more about the technology, start to talk with contractors or with a plumber. Get to know if your plumber is familiar with the technology. It may be that yours is not, and you need to find somebody else, and that takes time. It also means that you have to understand if your electrical system needs any kind of an upgrade. With a heat pump water heater, it's usually an easy switch out, but you want to know in advance if there's something you need to do to make that as easy as possible. So once you talk to your plumber, it's something to plan for and understand that you have a plan when you need it.
Now, this is one where actually I can speak from personal experience. My wife and I have been in the process of electrifying our home. It's going to take years. It's not something we can take on all at once, both because we can't afford it, but also because there's a lot of moving pieces and we have busy lives. So, we don't want to just do this. And we knew the age of our water heater. Like many water heaters, there's in Sharpie written on the side of the tank was the month and year that it was installed.
Right.
Plumbers do this and they put their own phone number down so that when it breaks in 10 years and 6 months, like clockwork, because they have 10-year warranties, you call them and they come in and they get another job 10
Right.
years and 6 months later. So we knew we had like 2 years on this thing. So we poked around. Mass Save had a good discount for a large water heater and an even deeper discount for a smaller water heater, which sounds sort of contradictory or confusing. But if you have a smaller water heater, you're using less energy to keep it warm. And so they want to encourage you to buy the smaller one, not the larger one. So my household of 5 has a 50-gallon heat pump water heater, and not once have we had a problem. We love it. And it is slower to recover. It takes longer to heat that tank. So, you don't want to be in the situation where, oh no, there's one more shower left and we're out of water. But there's a solution to that, and that is the phone. It turns out they've got an app, and I'm not much for apps, I will tell you. But if we've got company over, I turn the heat up from 120 to 140 or 150. That doesn't make the water come out any hotter out of the tap. There's a mixing valve, so it's the same temperature out of the tap. But because there's more heat in that water heater tank, the hot water lasts longer, and we've never had a problem. And it costs less money because heat pump water heaters are way more efficient than natural gas water heaters. So it actually costs us less money to operate. We love it. I'm a huge fan. But Kathleen, you're right. What we did is we figured it out ahead of time and made sure that we had a plug, the right kind of plug.
Right.
Where the water heater was that was running off of natural gas, so that when it went, we wouldn't need to call an electrician. We would only need to call a plumber. The electrician could do the work at a time. We had the plug. We were fortunate. We didn't need to do any of those upgrades, but we planned ahead. And it meant as soon as that thing went, there was the puddle on the basement floor. Here we go.
Yep.
Sprung into action, executed the plan, and the plumber was there that afternoon.
Yeah.
So we didn't miss a single shower.
Right. That's right. That's the goal. And, that just goes to show our guides can help with that, because every situation is different. Every household is different. And what you want to do is understand what some of those nuances are, and you want to be able to plan ahead, essentially. So our guides also include a lot of case studies so that you can see what different people did in different situations, because a lot of products have different options. There's sometimes different, considerations, like the size of your family or how big your household is. And the other thing that our guides do is it gives you all the available rebates and financial incentives so that you can actually see what's available. And there's a lot of money right now available as far as, tax credits and rebates.
That's right. There's several state programs. There's also the federal IRA passed under President Biden. The Inflation Reduction Act is perhaps the most aggressive and impressive climate bill ever passed by the federal government. And so there's a lot there.
Would
you suggest, if I just installed my gas-fired water heater or, reinstalled a heating system 5 years ago, should I be looking to rip it out tomorrow? And
I wouldn't. No, because really you want it to come to the end of your useful life of a system. That's really the most green thing you can do, is to not just start ripping things out so that you can replace them. That's not, that's not a good use of our resources, essentially. It's kind of wasteful, actually. So waiting and planning is probably your best bet.
And if you're waiting until the end of its natural life, well, you would have spent a chunk of money on something, whether it was the heat pump water heater or the gas-fired water heater, whether it was the air source heat pump for your space heating of your home and cooling of your home, or the air conditioning compressor or the oil boiler, right? You would have spent a chunk of money anyway. Maybe this costs a little more or a little less, depends on the rebates, depends on what's on sale at Lowe's, all of these things. But when we talk about the cost of this, if you're doing it on replacement, the cost is actually pretty small, because most of the money you would have spent, that doesn't make it easier on your credit card, but you were going to spend the money anyway.
Yes, absolutely. And the point is, the technology is ready. We have it. It's finding a knowledgeable installer and someone who can, help you plan ahead a little bit so that you're ready to make the switch.
Now, the building department, really by statute, can't help residents with finding a contractor. They're not allowed to. But is
That's
this
right.
something that Electrify Brookline can do, or should everybody just call you? How do we find someone who is reputable, knows what they're doing, puts up a fair price, maybe doesn't charge the Brookline 20%, the premium that all the contractors charge
Yes,
because you're Brookline, you
yes,
know it, I know it, right?
yes.
How do we find the right person to do this work?
Well, Electrify Brookline has put together a list of green contractors. So since this was also a huge barrier for people, we knew that it was important to find those people. So we started taking recommendations from your neighbors here in Brookline to assemble a list. And we're hoping to make that public around March 1st. And so that will be listed on the Mothers Out Front Brookline website and the Climate Action Brookline website, which are the two, main partners who are advocacy groups working on this, along with Zero Emissions Advisory Board. And that will list all the tax credits and financial incentives kind of culled from everywhere in one spot. And you can see, what makes the most sense for you. I mean, everyone has different circumstances, different financial means. We really want to encourage that everyone can do something. And like you said, you're going to spend the money anyways.
Eventually, right?
Eventually,
Things
yes.
that was not on your list was solar panels. Is that because
Mhm.
people shouldn't do solar panels?
No, we are coming out with guides on renewable electricity. We just have lots of work on our plate right now. We're trying to come out with a guide for renters. That's our first priority. Condo owners, and then also EV vehicles and chargers. So we're working on those right now, and we're doing a lot of neighborhood presentations. Solar panels are a great way to get started. That's how I started, actually, because I had a relatively new roof. It was a good time to do it, and I was able to find an installer that was able to show me the payback period was pretty small, actually. And of course, every circumstance is different. I had been told my roof was not suitable for solar, and then just a couple years later, it was. And I actually saw such a reduction in my electricity bills. It can be an awesome place to start, actually.
And I'm glad you mentioned renters and condo owners. 90% of all buildings in America are single family houses, but that's not true in Brookline, right? Most people
No.
live in something that's not a single family house. And so there's a couple of different kinds of challenges there. If you're a renter, you don't own the equipment. It's not your place to change in any way. But even if you're
Mhm.
a condo owner, maybe you don't control the central heating system. You certainly don't own the roof exclusively yourself, right? Even if it's a two-family house, it can be complicated. And so I say that out loud to point out that oftentimes when you go to search the internet for help, it's in the context of you're a single family homeowner who owns your own driveway and owns your own heating system. And many times in Brooklyn, that's not the case. And so do these guys, it sounds like, do in fact try to provide for some other possibilities.
Oh, definitely. The majority of households are not single family homeowners in Brookline. And so we actually on our checklist show, steps you can take, and they correlate with our guides, but there are also steps listed there that renters can take. And, working with your landlord or something is possible, but not always. And so weatherization's a big one. Reducing your own monthly utility bills is a huge savings that people can actually do quite a bit to help on. And that helps your own pocketbook and your own comfort. So we're trying to promote, healthy, comfortable, and energy efficient fossil fuel living for everybody. But not everybody's ready to, do, the biggest thing. And so doing something small is still very, very important. And you want to take that action to improve your own life as well, of course.
And so it's, you sort of hit on all of it. It's the comfort, it's the dollars, it's the climate, and we all are going to have to do all of these steps eventually. And so taking a step now, water's fine, take the next step, right? Maybe pause for a while because life gets complicated, or
Mhm.
you need the money for something else right now. I
Yeah.
just can't, right, whatever. I like that there's this sort of I think sometimes there's a dichotomy where there are folks who really believe in this and they've done like everything.
Mhm.
Their neighbor's like, well, look, I haven't gotten around to anything. And I know my neighbor really believes in it, but you know, she's an architect, so I'm going to let her do it. I'm not going to do anything. And I
Yeah.
like this is sort of a, hey, we're all in this together. It's not easy for anyone. It's easier for some than others sometimes, and we're going to help each other move forward. I think it's the right way.
Oh, yeah. And, whether you're just, getting a portable induction, I'm calling it a cook plate because it's actually like the size of a computer. You can actually, reduce, pollutants in your kitchen, and that actually helps you and your family. So it's something that everybody can do. And those are relatively inexpensive. And of course, you can check it out from the library, as I mentioned earlier, to see what it's all about.
Well, this is amazing. Folks can Google Electrify everything, Electrify Brookline.
That's right. Electrify everything. Right. I know I
Electrify
stumbled
everything.
on it. Now I can't. Yes,
Electrify everything,
electrify everything.
Electrify
Google
Brookline.
electrify everything. And there'll be more updates to come. So like I said, we've got a green contractor list that'll be available soon. And that will be, something that will be added to and evolve as well. And we're planning a lot of presentations, planning a lot of things for renters, planning a lot of things for condo owners, which is kind of, a huge range of sizes and buildings and building types. And so that's really the next focus that we're on for this coming spring.
Kathleen Scanlon from the Zero Emissions Advisory Board of Brookline. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And viewers, thank you for tuning in to TV on TV right here on Brookline Interactive Group. We've got another great show next week. And until then, go Google Electrify Brookline. Check out what you can do, whatever your housing type is, however much money's in your pocket. There's no doubt there's something you can do in conjunction with Mass Save and perhaps your neighbors. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Tommy.